All righty. Let's call this meeting to order. Angie, will call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
Commissioner Bunting.
Here.
Commissioner Lumberman.
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
All righty, very good. John, can you give us a prayer tonight?
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the blessings that you've given to Gratiot County and for the financial state we find ourselves in right now. And Lord, we ask that you give us wisdom and understanding as we go over the items on our agenda tonight and try to work in the best interests of the taxpayers of Gratiot County. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn. All right. We've got one change to the agenda that I know of. We're dropping the opioid litigation settlement report, and I believe he wants to move it to December is the note I got. So there won't be a closed session. Anyone else have any changes? So 6 is eliminated and the closed session.
Move the agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Bailey. We have a second. Second by Commissioner Lemmerman. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed. We have an agenda. Brief public comment. Any one of the public wishes to comment?
I'll make a quick comment. Fred Short here from Energy. Most of you, all of you at this point, just wanted to give you a brief update on our project. As you know, we've submitted our special use permit for New Haven Township. We got some feedback from Spicer on that, other things they want to see in the application, and we're now including that feedback back to that application as well as our other ones. And we are hoping to submit our county application to cover Newark and North Star townships, either end of this week or beginning of next week. So we will be in touch with you and your planning commission as we submit those applications for your review. And then Spicer indicated that they, I believe, I'm not sure if you've made that selection yet, but the planning commission indicated that they were going to select Spicer to review the engineering part of the application. So if they do, that's generally about 6 weeks, and we would look to schedule a public hearing for the permits.
All righty, thank you.
We're probably at the end of the year, Fred, or first part of January.
Yep, either end of this year or first part of next year.
All right, Matt, you see anybody online?
Nope, nobody is connected in right now to make public comment.
Okay, we'll move on then. The consent calendar. Anyone like to pull anything off the calendar? If not, we're looking for a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Bailey. We have a second.
Or
Support by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed. Okay. Tracy, looks like you're up.
Well, good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair, if I could first remind you that anyone who is speaking, if they could step up to the podium, because we otherwise cannot pick up the comments and the audio just isn't clear. So I know folks who might be watching these meetings later would certainly like to benefit from those comments. So just offering you that reminder this evening. Otherwise, I did include in your meeting packet information that's presented to me weekly from the health department. I don't know if you folks get it, so I just decided this week to add it. I get that about once a week. I would expect to get updated information again tomorrow or perhaps on Thursday. Of interest this particular week is that the cover email reports that boosters are available to folks at the health department. One just needs to call to schedule an appointment for that. And of course, we now know that we can mix the vaccine options. So if you receive Moderna, for example, for your first 2 injections, you can use Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Moderna. So that certainly expands some options. The waiting period differs. If you had J&J the first time, you need to wait at least 2 weeks after receiving that to get the second shot of the booster. For Moderna and Pfizer, the wait is 6 months after the last dose. I meant to say 2 months. I hope I didn't say 2 weeks. Two months after Johnson & Johnson vaccine and 6 months after the last dose of Moderna or Pfizer. So that's why they don't call me Tracy Cordes, MD, because apparently I don't really know when you should get injections. Anymore, looking forward, I'm going to be joining the Gratiot Isabella School Superintendents at their meeting tomorrow morning to review the status of what else, the wind turbine tax litigation. New RESD superintendent, Paul Hungerford, he's not sure how much the superintendents know. And because there are certainly financial implications for the school districts, he suggested that we swing by. And we is me, and I'll be joined by Tuscola ISD Superintendent Gene Pierce. He will be appearing by Zoom. I'll be heading up there in person. So looking forward to that. And of course, we'll be asking the superintendents for a little bit of help in this effort as well. Also, you have your special meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. You're hoping to generate discussion and information sharing among the townships. Chris and I will offer a few introductory comments. We have some PowerPoint slides we'll share. Once that piece is done, though, you all could really help by trying to get folks talking after we are done, because this isn't the Chris and Tracy show. We need the townships to begin talking to one another, sharing their questions, their ideas, what answers they have found. For example, Kurt Giles indicated that he plans to attend. He sat in on I think it was a video or a Zoom kind of thing, session that MCOG and MSU Extension presented on ARP funds. And so perhaps he will be able to chime in and help as well. Okay, in other departments, finance staff, they're busy doing their year-end closeouts. And it's just hard to believe, but audit preparation work is right around the corner. It's just hard to believe. Courthouse roof project has finally been completed. This was work on flat rubber surfaces to ensure protection against water penetration. That truly was the 2-week project that took 2 months. Tony will be following up with punch list issues, and there was some damage to some of our concrete sections, and so we'll be pressing them to maybe take care of that concrete work. So also in buildings and grounds, analysis and prep work on the health department building project continues. This is really one of our more significant projects this year, both in terms of cost, but also effort and the extent of the repairs and maintenance and renovation that will be done down there. We had talked about this a couple of meetings ago. We're also moving ahead with painting and carpeting the areas that are scheduled for upgrades this year. Kaylin's been taking the lead, as she does at this stage of the game, getting some quotes for both paint and carpeting. Some of the interior areas that our folks will paint themselves. I would expect that painting the Veterans Office, for example, it's a pretty small space. We'll try to do that with existing staff. Also, Matt's been involved in some pretty significant IT projects. He's going to show up. I think it's at the next meeting. He's going to provide you some updates and ask for your approval of a couple of things. So, he's out there, just keeping us updated and safe, the same old, and providing all of the tools that we need. So always grateful for Matt's work. And finally, as of this morning, the animal shelter had 5 dogs at the inn, 2 of which were adopted just prior to Tom's arrival for our weekly meeting. Seems to be cat season also, because there are 6 cats down there. 5 of them are kittens from 3 different litters. Who can resist a kitten? The sixth is a 3 to 4 year old male, nice cat, well socialized and so forth. So feel optimistic about getting everyone spayed, neutered, and adopted and out in the community. Also, the staff attended their fall conference last week at Crystal Mountain. They have fall and spring concerts. Good content. I asked Tom this morning what was the session that was of particular interest to him or provided new information. And it was a session that was presented by MSU that discussed emergency preparedness. So truck with herd of cattle or pigs or something is in the back of it, truck overturns. What do you do with the cattle? Who does what with the cattle? Well, there is emergency preparedness, there's a plan, and our folks would know what to do. So with the image of animals spread throughout the highway, that grisly thought, I will say that that is all for now.
Question.
Okay, I think George has a question for you.
Tracy?
Yep.
When I'm looking at that, the board approved list that was placed in front of us. I'm looking at all the different things that we've approved. And you mentioned health department, and then that caused me to look at the list, and I don't see that on the list.
That's because you have approved an up to amount. We don't yet have solid figures, and we're going to wait to until we have that. If it were tighter, I mean, we have a lot of money left over here. If it were tighter, I think that maybe we would handle that differently, but we're going to get some of those numbers very soon and it will be added.
Okay, so we've got approximately what, 300?
No, you have 500.
500?
5 million.
No, I'm saying we kind of like earmark 300 for that, correct?
Up
for the
to.
health department right now.
Up to $500,000 you have
That's what I
approved.
remember.
Okay, up to 500.
Up to 500,000.
It's going to come in far less, but you gave us an up to
Yeah.
500,000 just
Well,
to
I
give us that.
couldn't remember. I like to keep
Yeah.
that figure in mind when I'm looking at these.
You bet.
All right.
We won't
That's
let you
all I have.
overspend. Don't worry.
Yep, I have.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Tracy.
You bet.
Okay, Commissioner Committee reports. John?
The Parks Committee has decided to greatly increase the fees for everything for fiscal year 2022. In some cases, tripling fees. And the fees are really not that important to the running the parks. It's mostly the millage that makes the parks go. But we've just found we're very uncompetitive with the counties around us. So I'm think like right now, the pavilion fees are like $25. I think they could be going up to around $75. And I think the campsite fees are going up quite a bit too. So not everything is tripled, but a lot of them are going up a lot.
Is that to encourage people that are from another county to use their own
Yeah.
county parks?
Yeah, because they try to minimize as much as possible
Right.
the fees on the
Right.
Gratiot County.
And I understand that.
There,
Can there be a couple of levels? If you are from Gratiot County, one level, and if you're not, a different level?
yes, that's the way it is right now.
Okay,
That's the way it is.
yeah,
right
so
now.
those, not so much the county fees would go up but the other out of county fees are gonna go up?
Correct.
So the in-county fees are gonna be staying the same?
Or minimally going up.
Okay,
The other thing that they're doing is as much as $20,000 worth of business last year, this season that just ended was cash business.
Hmm.
And they're going to go to the Civic Rec software, which is software that the county uses already, but they're going to that both so that debit cards and credit cards can be used instead of employees having to handle
Yeah,
so much
that's-
cash. And also to use that as reservations. So that's all I have on Parks and Rec. Airport Committee has not met since May. I had just an informal talk with Matt Schooley and Eric Ripley. Just a catch-up talk, but there's not much. There's not really very much that has happened at all. We're supposed to be having another meeting shortly, but we don't have one quite scheduled yet.
Hey, thank you, John. George?
We had a Board of Health meeting last week. A lot of different subjects were talked about. Dr. Morris presented on misinformation. It's one of the biggest things that the health system is trying to combat right now. A lot of things on the internet, and a lot of things going on that aren't true, telling people to do different things that aren't so. And so they're looking at trying to counter that, but with today's information highway, and they can say about anything and do anything they want to, it's tough. But she did make us a form that informed that we do have she had a word for it, but it was a pandemic of the information type. So that's what they're going through now. And then Clinton County has been having some problems, but I think those are going to get ironed out.
And I also had the health board meeting, and what I took away from it is some of the other counties, particularly Clinton, seem to be having a problem with the school boards blaming us as the boogeyman, and where they're saying things about the health board that aren't actually true. It's up to the school boards to set the policies. We're just giving them information. And looking forward to the meeting tomorrow night, and I know for sure Alma is planning on being there. Yeah.
I didn't have any meetings that was with the county this last week. Usually I do, but because of the Halloween and a lot of them had their meetings earlier in the month, so I have no report.
Met with 3 townships, talked a little bit about tomorrow night. Did make contact with all my townships to just make sure that they attend. My thought about this tomorrow night is that we can give them some guidance. My fear is, I told all the townships, is that they may spend their money in the wrong way, get audited in 6 months and say, we want that 50 grand back. And nobody can pay it back in our townships. I mean, where I'm at, and so I did stress to them to all try to get there, had questions that, we'd answer them the best they could, with Chris and Tracy, and if we couldn't find answers, we'd help them find those answers for them, I hate to see anybody getting caught 6 months from now from the federal government and say, we'd like our money back. And they were just wrapping some of their stuff up for the end of the year, as all of those guys were, kind of normal stuff. But I did, like I say, make calls to all the townships and a couple of the villages that are in my area.
All righty. Thank you, Sam. So move on to new business. First up, Hope House request for ARP funds. And whoever's going to handle that, I guess we want you up here at the podium so we pick you up good. You can move that around if it works better for the 3, I guess.
Set that there.
These guys are preachers. They know how to talk loud.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to come and tell you what's going on with Hope House, kind of update you on some things, some expansion of services we intend to employ throughout this season, and just kind of in a general sense, bring you guys up to date as county commissioners as to what is happening with Hope House. There have been a lot of changes that we've been able to make over the last 18 months, really. And so it's a good opportunity for us just to kind of show you, tell you what's happening. My name is Nathan Workman. I am one of the directors there. This is Jake Gregory. He is the other director for the shelter, and Carolyn Studley, one of our board members, is also with us in support. I believe that you all should have received a packet that had some slides in it
what we're going to do is go through those slides in general. There's a lot of detail there that we may not initially touch on. So if you have a question about something there that we don't hit on, be sure and ask that question. We're going to provide a little bit of color to some of the numbers that are there. And so to kind of begin that, Jake is going to walk us through some of the initial pieces.
So one of the things we wanted to just talk about is how we got to where we're at as a shelter. We started working on the shelter project 4 years ago. We incorporated shortly thereafter, and we opened for our first night of housing in January of 2019. That first season was a short season, was just kind of getting our feet wet, so to speak. We were open 11 weeks. We served about a dozen guests during that time and had about 200 volunteers. Our second season was really our big full season. We were open from November, right around November 1st, right up until through the beginning of the pandemic. We did have to close the shelter a couple of weeks early, but at that time we were able to make arrangements to house the individuals that were still in our care at a local motel that was still open at that moment. And so we kept them housed through our commitment date of April 6th. That year, we served more than 75 guests, ranging from 9 months old into their 70s. We had 600 plus volunteers that year. And we have determined that our average length of stay in the shelter is about 45 nights. And roughly 50% of our residents are moving from the shelter into a positive housing outcome, which means they're being sustainably housed through the resources that are available in our community, particularly through the housing commissions and ACAP, which is our housing assessment and resource agency. Of those residents that we have served, we estimate up to 90% of them are lifelong residents of Gratiot County, or are folks who maybe weren't from Gratiot County, but some other circumstance in life has brought them here, sometimes years before they find themselves in their and this has become home for them. Given where we're at in the state, there is a little bit of transient nature to things. And it's also important to know that in Gratiot County, the way things work out when it comes to housing resources, we're lumped in with Isabella County by the state of Michigan. And so there is a sharing that takes place there of resources, decision-making, and then serving clientele between those two counties. So not all, but many of the individuals who maybe wouldn't be from Gratiot County are actually from Isabella County and are part of that kind of transactional nature. Yes.
Just curious, you said 50% of the guests go to a positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the other 50% that don't get the positive outcome? Is that why the average stay is 45 nights, because their stay is greatly elongated?
Typically, they're shorter stays. So they're individuals who weren't compliant with the rules of the shelter or with their case plan, they are individuals that aren't sustainably housed, but are moved to a shelter that's able to, has better resources equipped to work with their situation, specifically domestic violence shelters. And then there are some who just outside of our control decide that they don't care to do the work any longer and leave. Some of them leave and go to bigger cities. Some of them, we don't know where they go, but that's usually where the other half is made up of. So looking at some broader statistics, and this is just to help kind of paint the picture for where things are in Gratiot County. The most recent ALICE report, which was released this year, it's put out by the United Way, and ALICE it's an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It's a way of defining what we've often called the working poor. And in Gratiot County, 45% of residents are either in that ALICE bracket or in poverty, which basically means, to be honest, you don't have the means to meet a household survival budget for what it costs to live in your community for a family of your size. And those household budgets are reviewed and what people are actually spending, and they're localized to the county. So they're very specific report. And you can see there what those percentages are for some specific municipalities within the county. This is a little bit older statistic, but it's kind of an important one to know. They define a housing burden as a family that spends more than 30% of their income on housing. If you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, it's considered a housing burden. In Gratiot County, that is true of 22% of homeowners and 56% of renters. And so what that does for us is it creates a little bit of a difficulty when we're working with people who maybe get jobs or get assistance as finding sustainable housing that's affordable for them. So sometimes stay in the shelter is impacted just on the ability to find affordable housing within the community. Lastly, just to kind of articulate the need, in the packet that was provided to you, we have information from the 2018 report for Gratiot County that's released by the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. At that time, those are the most current numbers that I had. So from the time we submitted this report to now, we were able to get the 2020 report, and I have those numbers for you. They do vary slightly. In 2020, there were 110 people who were literally homeless. And what that means is there's 110 individuals that had the means to make contact with 8CAP, to put them into the housing management information system and to get them counted. So we don't know how many of those individuals never made that phone call. We know of some that were in our stay at the shelter who never followed through on those steps of making that phone call. And there, of course, are the ones that just don't ever take the step to come either to the shelter or calling 8CAP. Of that 110, there were 43 single adults, 4 unaccompanied minors, which, just to clarify that term, is people from Gratiot County, but who are under the age of 18 and aren't in the care of a parent or legal guardian. 25 adults in families, 44 children in families, 6 veterans, and 14 individuals over the age of 55. And so that kind of begins to hopefully help paint a picture of what about the need in Gratiot County, kind of what that looks like here.
So those are the numbers. The way that homelessness shows up in our view is different here in a rural community than it is in an urban community. Before working with the homeless situation here in Gratiot County, my thoughts every time I heard about homeless was reflective of what I would see on television or in the movies. In fact, driving in parts of Grand Rapids where my daughter lives, down a particular street, not 10 days ago, I saw gatherings of individuals who were on a street that didn't have a lot of vacant storefronts, and they were gathered in those places. And that was always the picture that I had about homelessness. That is a picture very specific to urban homelessness. For us in a rural county like we have, it is very much hidden. If you were to walk down or drive through the streets of any of our cities or smaller towns, you don't see that kind of thing happening. Mostly the homeless encampments around the city look like the pictures that you have in your packet. The picture on the left is an encampment that was discovered just a few years ago in our county. The one on the right is a picture of an encampment that's in Isabella County. And like Jake mentioned, we share a lot in common with Isabella. So that's why we felt compelled to include that picture there. If you were to drive around our county and venture into some of the urban wooded areas, that is where you would find a lot of the homeless population of our county, kind of hidden back away in places like the place I live in on the north side of St. Louis backs up to the cemetery. And so there's a homeless encampment that's up there, and it's kind of hidden. You kind of have to look for it. They do a good job of kind of disguising it. There has been a homeless encampment spotted in the woods along Bridge Street towards Alma. So those are the kinds of places around our county where the homeless kind of hide and tuck themselves away. I don't believe this was last year, but the prior year of 2019, there was a known homeless person found in one of the dumpsters in the city of Alma. And this is the move of someone who is very desperate to get out of the cold as much as possible as you can find in a dumpster. That is largely what homelessness looks like in our county. And I can't begin to tell you how much we have learned about the difference, the staggering difference between urban homelessness and rural homelessness. And we are now seeing kind of in living color how those things play out and what those things look like on a daily basis for those that are struggling with homelessness. Now, something that we didn't mention in here, but is a very prevalent problem within homelessness, both in cities and rural communities like ours, is couch surfing. So there are a lot of individuals that don't have a place to live. And so they are bouncing from one place to another, staying there as long as they can, sleeping on somebody's couch or in an extra bedroom, or they are doubled up where there are multiple families living in a single family unit. Those two things are very big pieces of the homeless population in both rural and urban settings.
So included in your packet is just some stories. Some of those we're gonna real briefly share with you. One of them that's in there is a handwritten note that came to us from a 17-year-old guest when we closed about 18 months ago. She and her family were with us for a large part of the season. And you can read there in her own words, in her own writing, what the shelter meant to her, not just because it provided housing for her, but it provided something far less tangible, sustainability and stability for a season of life, probably one of the first seasons of her life where there was any stability. It provided her with a sense of community, and with that came a sense of dignity, that her life had value and had worth. She is an individual. We have continued to stay in contact with her family. I know that she continues to remain employed and is still sustainably housed, as is her family at this time. That is a family that Nathan will talk about more in just a moment, but has been a part of the Gratiot County system for decades.
Mm-hmm. And it's these stories that really drive what we do, because now it puts a face on those that we look at and realize, because the truth is, you have probably seen some of these folks that we have served over the past 4 years and some that we are going to be serving this year. But it is easy to look past them and to not realize that they're living in their car, that they are couch surfing. One particular story, G, that's on the Stories That Matter slide. She's struggled with mental illness, as she told us, and we got to know her over the course of most of 2 seasons. She struggled with mental health most of her adult life. And the ability for us to provide a stable place to live where she is no longer in crisis, where she's not worried about where she's going to sleep, if she's going to have a roof over her head, she's going to be in a place where there's food for her. That stability allowed us to help walk her through getting a grip on her mental illness struggles. I can gladly report that this woman now lives in, and has for the past, I think now about 18 months, lived in an apartment near where I live. I see her every week walking to and from. She doesn't own a car. She rides her bike with a fella that she lives with, and she looks healthy. She seems more stable than even in the last days that she was with us before the shelter closed. That is one particular story of how the stability has come to someone's life.
The story of R is a gentleman that maybe you have seen him at one point. He was around Alma for many years. In fact, when I first started venturing into working with people living in homelessness, I would hear stories of this man. And he would get a little bit of motel dollars here or there, but ultimately he was comfortable living a homeless lifestyle. It was all he had known for much of his adult life, right here in Gratiot County. After he came to us in our second season, we were able to get him connected with some resources. We were able to help him reconnect with some of the family relationships that had been burdened over the years. And he was able to move into a rental where he remains to this day, almost 2 years now. He's been sustainably housed. I would venture to say that's the longest time period he's been sustainably housed throughout most of his adult life.
C represents someone that I knew probably better than a decade ago. I met her when she had just little children. She's actually the mother of the young lady who wrote the teenage letter. She has been in and out of domestic abuse situations and relationships most of the time that I have known her. And what happened over the course of her and her children's time with us is there was some stability that was found where she didn't feel like she had to jump into a relationship in order to provide housing stability for her family. That process feels so broken to me. And yet what happened as she stayed with us, not all of her problems were cured and not all of her potential for bad decisions was taken care of and wiped away, but provided stability for a season of her life that has now begun to carry through in these last 18 months.
The last two on here are J and T. And the truth is, these are two individuals that I have known for a few years. In fact, I connected with each of them through different means in my pre-shelter days, if you will, when I was just functioning as a pastor within the community. Over different seasons and through different circumstances, they both came to our shelter, and both of their lives have been ravaged by two things. The first of which is childhood trauma, and the second of which is addiction that was probably started by the trauma. I was speaking with T's mother one day. She'd called to check on her daughter, and she said, you know, she was sexually assaulted as a 17-year-old. Her development stopped that day. And so as now an adult in her mid-30s, she was functioning still like a teenager because of what that trauma had done to her brain, and then how it led to addictions. And Jay has a similar story. And again, each one of these are Gratiot County lifelong residents. Those last two are right here from Ithaca. So this is a problem that's very much a part of our community. And as we began to see that need as two pastors in the community, began to think imaginatively about not just what our churches could do, because by no means, well, now it's one church since we've merged them, but by no means does our church have the ability to support Hope House or to take on this endeavor. It has been a partnership with Gratiot County churches. You can see there in your packet quotes from other churches and pastors that have come alongside of us, and that's just two of many. You can see quotes from volunteers, and then also some things that our shelter guests had to say during the first days of the pandemic. While we were locked down but still open, our assistant at that time gave us a wonderful gift. She sat down with several of our guests and just asked them one question: what has Hope House meant to you? And she videotaped it and gave that to Nathan and I as a gift to see the impact that the work, not just that we were doing, but that Hope House was having in their lives. And so we were able to just pull those quotes from that. We don't need to read those, but you have them before you, and you can begin to see the impact that this makes in the lives of Gratiot County residents. So I'm thinking about the proposal that we have submitted to you. We have looked over the American Rescue Plan documents from the government and identified the ways in which we believe we fall under the parameters of that, and are tried to articulate for you how COVID has impacted us. And that has come in two very meaningful forms. One is an extreme shortage of volunteers, which we've quantified for you in that. And we can tell you that the shelter opened last night, and we had just 2 volunteers. We have just a handful of folks who are there today, and we will be doing our fair share of overnight shifts this coming week, and filling in the dinner shifts, sometimes with their own families, because the volunteer force just isn't coming out. And we understand that COVID is still very much an issue in our community. And the numbers and what's happening here, we understand people's hesitancy to come out to the shelter, and we don't fault them for that. But we're still dealing with that volunteer shortage, which is why we're seeking the funds necessary to hire staffing so that we're able to continue to operate, meet this need seasonally and then year round without volunteers. We also know that being a year-round shelter is not sustainable on volunteers. It's just not a sustainable model to operate 365 days a year. And then the other, of course, is finances. Our giving is half of what it was this time last year. The churches that supported us, of course, are struggling financially as a result of COVID. We haven't felt like we could go to a lot of community leaders or business leaders because, of course, businesses were negatively impacted by COVID. And then just generally, people have less to give and are budgeting their personal finances more than what we saw in the past. So we are feeling the strain of giving. And that is what led us towards seeking an emergency shelter program funds. And we were granted those and are glad to be working with the state of Michigan, MDHHS, and the Salvation Army through that. But it does not meet the whole need, which unfortunately they're not able to fully fund any shelter in the state of Michigan. So we are seeking the funds necessary to fill that gap.
I would just like to say that I'm very familiar with your Hope House. I'm from St. Louis, and our church was very involved, First Methodist Church. And so you guys do a really great job.
Thank you.
You've had a chance to hear the professional speakers. I have just a couple things to say, but I had to write down some of it, and I won't be nearly as eloquent as they were. But I'm Carolyn Studley, and I'm on the board. I have been a volunteer in lots of different ways throughout the community. I saw a lot of these issues when I was a principal and when I was a teacher. The biggest thing that stops families from seeking help is they're afraid that their kids are going to be taken away. That's just the bottom line. They know that they feel like it's their fault. They've screwed up. They've made a mistake. They don't know how to recover. They don't have the skills yet. But we do realize that this is a big ask. This isn't just a couple $1,000s. We asked for quite a bit when we were filling out the forms for the ESP grant. And we figured out exactly what it would take to do this as a year-round project. We were shocked. So we cut it down more, and it's still a very big number. I realize that. I'm a retired educator, so I understand budgets. I understand the impacts of money. Throughout some of my other careers, I know that about 22% of the adults in Gratiot County have a certificate, a license of some kind, a 2 or a 4-year degree. And the reason this is important to put in perspective with all of this is because statistics show that people who have not gone on for any kind of education beyond high school are less likely to volunteer. And these are statistics from the national government. They're less likely to volunteer. They're less likely to have the funds or care about sharing their funds with their churches, organizations like this, or child advocacy, or any of them. They are just more, and they're also more likely to not have the skills to recover from a mistake. They just have gone through some bumps in the road, and that makes it really hard for them. The salaries in our budget, I know, come together for a lot, but it is for a significant number of people. The church and the Hope House board met a year and a half ago or so and tried to figure out how to do this so that we could still run it and they could still have a church. And what we came up with, our goal was to keep each of the pastors whole, but divide up their time. And so that meant each organization paid for a different proportion of them. These guys aren't full-time people or full-time plus people. Jake takes on more of the responsibilities for Hope House and less for the church. So his salary is based on that. Nathan has the exact opposite effect. He does more of the church work and has fewer responsibilities at Hope House. But I do want you to know that beyond what they have to spend their time doing for Hope House, they volunteer a tremendous number of hours. They pick up any shift that isn't taken most of the time. We couldn't do it without them. The last thing I wanted to say is that I attended lots of meetings in the last couple of months, And I heard the community speak about what they felt was important. And one of the things that people kept saying is we need to take care of the people in our county first. We need to help homeless and we need to help veterans. This does that. This is exactly what people were saying we should be doing with funds that we have. I know there was one more thing on my mind and I've just lost it as I was doing that. But do you have more questions for us?
I want to make sure you're requesting 87,000 per year for 3 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we do.
Jen, are they requesting that or are they requesting 215,000?
Either way.
Well, I guess I'd like to know which way would be, you feel would serve it better.
So as we were, just completed the emergency shelter program funds, we had requested from them over $250,000. Again, when we began to realize what it would take to run a shelter year round with staffing and meeting the needs, it was a much bigger number than I think we ever anticipated.
Came to about 350.
The overall budget. And so we then pared it back, as Carolyn noted. And so then once we got our determination from the Salvation Army and what they could give us, which when it's all said and done will be about $100,000, we decided that we had basically two ways to proceed. If we get the $215,000, that will ensure that we operate this year, which will run November 1st through next fall. The fiscal year for the state, of course, ends September 30th. But as a year-round shelter, we'll have the staffing and everything we need to be around. That allows us to do all the fundraising that we can do to sustain that beyond this first year. We were given less than 8 weeks notice that we were getting the ESP funds, and we were given 2 weeks notice from our opening of just how much we were getting. So we were very short on time to know even what we needed to fundraise for. The other alternative is the $87,000 a year for 3 years, which, as I understand it, is the term of the American Rescue Plan and coincides with our ESP dollars. That would ensure that for each of those 3 years, we're able to operate at the very least seasonally with the staff necessary to do that. In the off season, we will be doing case management, continue to work with people living in homelessness. And then that directs our fundraising at raising the funds we need for what would have been an off season for each of those 3 years. So this kind of gives us two ways forward, and really leaving it up to you as a board of commissioners and how you steward and budget the money given to you, what you think is the best use of the dollars given to our county. Either way, we believe it's the right next step for us to continue meeting the needs in Gratiot County.
Are you still at the church there on 46 also?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I did think of my last comment, if you guys don't mind. I'm sorry. When Jake was working on statistics, and he and I worked on a lot of this together, but one of the things we found out was that for each person who stayed there, it costs about $2,000 throughout their stay to house them and keep them going and things like that. I couldn't, as a school educator, do that for students for the length of time we do. When we closed down early and housed people in motels for the week to fulfill our promise to them that we'd be open until April, cost $6,000 at a local motel to keep them. So this is a bargain. I know it doesn't feel like, I know the total amount is a lot, but it is a cost-effective way of helping people in need and doing something good. Okay. I won't interrupt again.
Okay, so you're looking for a motion?
I got a couple of questions. Earlier in the presentation, you guys talked about the partnership with Isabella County.
Mhm.
Are you also asking Isabella County for funds?
No. Not for the American Rescue Plan dollars. The state of Michigan has lumped Gratiot and Isabella County together. And so the funds that we get for housing services to rehouse people is a pot of money that divides between the two counties. We are lumped with them when it comes to, in some of our other counties, when it comes to the ESP funds, our prosperity region, that's divided up. So the state divides its funds up that way, but we still exist to serve Gratiot County. We just have to partner with Isabella when it comes to moving people into sustainable housing and things like that.
So there's not a Hope House entity that's operating in Isabella?
There is a Isabella County Restoration House, which is its own shelter for Isabella County. They operate seasonally. They're a rotating shelter that moves from church to church every week.
But they are not a part of our budget
No.
or our plans or anything like that. We partner with them only in that we will share information. If they have somebody who needs to be housed coming down here, we will talk with them or vice versa.
Is the lease that paid here to the Restoration 12 Church,
Mhm.
is that something that you've done since the beginning, or is that something you're just going to start doing this year?
We've done it since the beginning.
So,
And that lease basically covers the cost of being in the shelter. It covers the utilities for shelter occupancy. It covered, electricity, and we've expanded. Now we're utilizing more of the building than we ever have, as we have created new spaces.
The church helped pay for new windows when we needed new windows in some of the rooms and things like that. So the church at the beginning really contributed a lot of money from our rent.
Yeah, but we have paid, and it's about $1,500 a month is what it comes out to.
is there, and I guess I don't know how to ask this, is there like a firewall to make sure that finances are not commingled
Yes.
between Hope House and the church?
Hope House is a 501c3 nonprofit, incorporated separate, has a separate operating board from the church. We just are employed by,
Okay. And
and there's a lease between the two.
the church itself, if the church encounters financial difficulties or becomes defunct,
Mhm.
what happens? What happens then for Hope House?
We will look to take out a mortgage.
And that's a conversation that we have been having, not because of the church's financial state necessarily, but at some point as we continue to grow. So we're now sharing space with the church fellowship hall to operate our day shelter hours. We have some shared office space and conference room space. We have a full Sunday school room we've turned into a learning center where our case managers work, and we have some training center set up for our guests. The question becomes, what makes more financial sense for the shelter to own the building and the church to lease back space for its uses, or to continue doing what we're doing? So the conversation of purchasing the building has been a part of a broader, vision that's not just about viability of the church.
Okay, so specifically, if it were to happen, the building is owned by the church. There's no debt is there a mortgage?
There is a mortgage on the building that it's what, $60,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Is the current mortgage on the building. The conversation that we've had is, if in doing that would be buying it from the church for the indebtedness. And then, which, as we've had the conversations, we've gone as far as having our accountant look at all of this, had some conversations with the bank that we bank with and everything. The payment would be less, for the mortgage would be less than we're paying in lease. Now, of course, that changes utilities and other things, but as far as the financial viability of owning the building, our accountant has said that that's a conceivable option for us.
How long has the parent church been there? You just merged two churches, right?
Yes, the church, technically, the Church of the Nazarene has been since 1927. What we did is we are still the same corporation that we have always been since that time. We've rebranded ourselves, but as far as our corporation status, we've been continuous since 1927.
Who owns the church? Who owns the church building?
The church does.
The Church of the Nazarene kind of mothership owns it?
No, the local church owns it.
The local,
Yes. The district doesn't own the building. I mean, they have a hand in some things, and they've been fully supportive of this, including the conversation about purchasing the building.
so you have separate boards. Who is on your board of the Hope House?
Carolyn is our secretary of the board. Alice Grau is on our board. Pastor Jet Darren from the Church of Christ is on our board. Chris Hill is on our board. Ashley Bader is on our board, and Michelle Grant.
Then you have a board for your church.
We do.
They do not commingle, but
I guess I'm still looking for your opinion of the best way to serve the Gratiot County homeless. Should we give you 215,000 or should we give you 87,000 over 3 years?
I believe the 215,000. And the reason I say that is because typically the emergency shelter program has required its shelters to be year round. Once our funding came out, they said, we realize we're not able to give particularly rural shelters like Gratiot the funds necessary to operate year round. So we're kind of piloting a program where they would allow us to be seasonally, so long as we can prove to them the effectiveness of operating seasonally. By doing the 215,000, it secures this year for us, kind of changes that a little bit. And like I said, it buys us the year to work on the long-term funds.
If we did the 215, would you anticipate you'd be here next year needing another 215?
No.
Where would you get funding? Get another 215?
fundraisers, donations, churches. There's a group that funded us quite well before COVID started. But, our businesses are hurting and our industry is hurting. And so we haven't gone to them yet because we really wanted them to feel the effects of the lessening of the pandemic. We're starting those conversations. But we've had really good support in the past. This is the first where we haven't. And I really believe that that's why these funds are important and work with your programs, because I do believe it's from the issues of COVID related issues.
And it's been about 18 months since we've been able to do a meaningful fundraiser. So the funds we've been operating off of has been what we had in reserves and what has come in, over that time with minimal effort on our part. The other thing is, in conversations with the Salvation Army, that dollar amount will be renegotiated every year. And statistically, as they continue to reevaluate funds where needs are across the state, those numbers are going up. Now, they won't go up by, $215,000 next year, but incremental increases will also help with that. And this movement and the budget we've presented is in many ways a big leap forward. And we started just volunteering our time, and then it was a little remuneration for Nathan and I. Now that we have case managers and we'll have these staffed, it is a large jump forward, but it's the jump forward for the foreseeable future. This moves us from where we've been at to a whole new model. We don't anticipate growing at this rate every year for the next several years either.
Can I ask how many people stayed at your place last night? Besides, how many homeless people were there?
Last night was our opening night. We had one individual that was with us. We have 6 that are registered. We did some more today. We had a family that's all set up to come in, and then a relative paid for one more night in the hotel. They'll be with us tonight. And we have about 4 others we have calls that have come in that we're working on getting their intakes scheduled with them.
The example of the family that chose to stay in a motel another night rather than come to Hope House last night is an example of why we need our case managers to be working. Because any of us sitting in this room, if you had a choice of somebody giving you $100 to spend the night in a motel or have a free place to spend and save that $100 for something you might need in the next couple of weeks, you'd make a different decision than that person did. They need the skills. They need to work with our case managers to learn those skills. And that's what they do. That's what these people are hired to do. And
I want to be real honest with you. I have a hard time with your budget. I'm not a real numbers guy, but I understand dollars. And I look at your 5 people. I did this all in the course of a day. You know, I looked at your 5 folks who work there. When you look at like Lisa and Linda and Rachel and Michelle and you both yourselves, did any of these people get paid for the last 4 or 5 years out of this operation? Or was that all volunteer?
It was all volunteer.
So now when you look at it,
Assistant who was working 5 hours a week, up to about 20, but that was it, besides us.
this is just a question I want to ask. Are you still being, if you're going to be the full-time guy here, are you still getting paid from the church too to do church work?
remember, there's a full salary. The church pays part of it and Hope House pays part of it. So it's not like he's paid full-time from Hope House and gets money from the church on top of that. It's not like Nathan gets full-time from the church and gets paid for Hope House on top of it. We do a blended salary to make them whole.
So this $45,000 that's in your budget for the executive director of operations full-time, which my understanding would be you, that salary part of that comes from the church?
No, that's the shelter part of it. I mean, I will disclose to you, I get $230 a month from the church. That's my salary. So.
And then it's kind of the other way around, then you make a little more from the church than you
Substantial.
get $25,000 or $24,000 a year.
The other numbers that are in there, an executive assistant, that's 20 hours a week. Our resource navigators, we currently have 2. This would allow us to add on a 3rd because the 2 that we have only working about 10 hours a week based on their circumstances. So this allows us to really meet that need fully. The shelter coordinator is a new role, and the shelter assistants, that's factored on working 20 hours a week at $13 an hour is how we came up with that number to keep them scheduled.
And you can blame me that we're paying $13 an hour or up to, what do Michelle? What do they?
I guess it's really, I just look at the bottom line number here. I'm looking at the bottom line number. A couple other numbers I look at is that, but I really look at when you look at the bus passes and things like that, it's only $23,000 in food that you're going to provide for these folks. But then when I go to administration, I look at almost $5,000 for legal and accounting, job site office supplies, $12,000. Telephone and stuff. Is this telephone shared with the church? You have your own church is $4,500.
It's all its own.
You got liability or you got fundraising of $6,000. Must be cost you $6,000 to go raise funds type of thing or have fundraisers.
That's a small number too.
Yeah. And the other thing I look at is business meals and entertainment, $4,000. Tell me what that is.
So part of the struggle that we run up against is in the world that we live in, there are 2 playbooks. One is the for-profit sector and one is for the nonprofit sector. For-profit sector says you can spend all kinds of money to raise money and build funds and large scale things. And all of a sudden, when it goes over to the nonprofit, we say we can't do that. And it doesn't work because in order to gain the funds that are needed, you have to, it's the old adage, you have to spend money in order to make money. And if you're going to gain the support of the community that you're a part of, you have to be willing to invest some time. So the money there that's for the meals and entertainment, those are opportunities for us to meet with someone and take someone out to lunch and to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we need you as a local business owner or a philanthropist to pour back into Hope House. So there is a disequity that's largely placed on nonprofits that says, we don't want you to spend any money on building who you are, building your relationships. We just want you to figure out how to get money without ever spending any money. And it creates this imbalance with nonprofits that quite honestly isn't fair.
I'm involved with a lot of nonprofits. I say a lot, half a dozen, and they have for-profit companies in them. So is part of this Hope House for-profit company also then?
No.
And how do you spend that if you don't have a for-profit?
Spend what?
Like the money for meals and entertainment? I understand that. We have, in one of the organizations I'm involved in, and it's a 503C or whatever it is. And the other thing was you have a for-profit side of that company. So we trust money, we do stuff for funeral homes, we do stuff, a number of things to make money. And then what happens is the profits go over, they're given back to the nonprofit at the end of the year and we zero out. So I'm just asking you, as part of this a for-profit company, or is it, how do you just got done explaining that you have to have for-profit?
Our goal as a board is to be able to pay back that money every year. But you've got to have it in your budget or you can't spend it. I'm on their board. I don't let them, like when they come and talk to us about budgets and what we need, he's laughing because he knows this. My first thing is, where is it in the budget? Do you have the money saved to do it? Can you do it? There isn't a nonprofit that I've worked with. I've been on Child Advocacy Board forever. Mike's been on it too. United Way, all of them spend a small portion of their total budget to do those kinds of things in the hopes of making more than that back to make up the difference and to put it back into the programs.
So to illustrate, we've used little of that so far this fiscal year, but meeting with other pastors to try and get their churches involved, connecting with other nonprofits, and establishing relationships and how we service clients well. It's also the fund that we use to do things like volunteer appreciation dinners and that kind of stuff. So it's geared towards helping facilitate healthy relationships in the community and within our supporters.
The question I have is, when you go out and do a fundraiser, I don't know what kind of fundraisers you do, but how much money do you generate on an average? Do you make $1,000 a fundraiser? Do you make 50? Do you make 5,000? I mean, what kind of fundraisers do you do to generate money?
Well, we have chili cook-off coming up in, what is that? Just a little over, in 2 weeks. So we're hoping that is a good sized fundraiser for us. It would be terrific if we raised $5,000, but that's the first time we've done that. So we're not really sure what we'll receive from that.
Any ideas, some of your past fundraisers, just roughly, that you've done?
3 to 5, but we haven't done many. I mean, the first couple of years we did a craft show kind of a thing, and that turned out just a little bit. The bigger fundraisers that we were beginning to try our hand at, and actually in partnership with some other agencies, all of that was coming to fruition just as COVID hit. And every time, it's kind of frustrating, but every time we've talked about having that conversation again, COVID cases kind of go through the roof and it continues to get kicked down the road. So, we've seen the model, we've talked with other nonprofits and that are bigger in our area and, try to learn from them about how do you generate some of those big fundraisers. But COVID came to us less than 2 years into this game. So half of our time has been throughout the life of COVID. So we've not gotten to the point of getting to do those big things yet. And they're top on our list as things hopefully continue to improve and that becomes less and less of a threat in our community.
They're hoping to make 10,000, I should be over there, I'm sorry. United Way has given them a matching grant. And that means for every dollar they raise, United Way gives them a matching dollar. And so that's hopefully between the different agencies will raise $10,000 plus then they get the 10,000 from United Way. So that would be 20 for the agencies to share. So that would help us get into next year.
I mean, to make up 215 for next year, you're gonna be every weekend gonna be tied up raising money.
We're gonna be very busy, but this allows us to like I said, operate the shelter at a level we've never been able to before and have staff around us that doesn't, that changes the demand on our time. Part of the reason we've not done much fundraising is because it's hard to operate the day-to-day operations of the shelter and all of the work that goes into fundraising efforts. And so this again is a change of model for us.
I know that you also, don't you, like a lot of the people that come in, you help them find jobs. Once they get a job, do they give you a little bit of money back or offer to help?
No, we do not do that, and this the ESP will not allow us to take funds for that. But they do participate. They do, chores, and we have had opportunities where we've had food donated, and we kind of made arrangements for them to help cook, and so they do things to help participate and give back, but not monetarily.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve 215,000 to the Hope House. And I think again, I'm very familiar with this. I've had two nephews that have been homeless that I didn't know about. One committed suicide this year, being hopeless, 30 years old. So I think your program is wonderful. I wish that he had gotten in someplace.
Motion by Commissioner Bunting. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Lemmerman. Any further discussion?
Tracy, does this qualify? Hello, Tracy?
I had a lot of buttons to push there. Yes, it does. We're very satisfied it qualifies.
I guess I just want to make this statement, and I think it's a great thing what you're doing. I don't think anybody ought to go hungry. I don't think anybody ought not have a place to sleep and be warm. And I just don't know. I hate to put money in this thing for 1 year and really count on having 30 fundraisers to have enough money to do it again next year. And I just don't know if it's a good investment. I'm concerned about the budget. I think it's kind of top heavy.
I would encourage you with that in mind then to come out and take a look at what we do.
I'll do that.
That would be great.
Any other questions or discussion?
The only thing I'd like to say, I'd like to have your phone number. I have a few things I'll donate to you. I have a brand new crock pot that I'll give you so you can make soup or your chili or whatever you'd like. And a few other things I'll donate that you could put into a garage sale this summer. But I'd also like to stay in contact with you. I might know a couple of people that would volunteer also to help you.
Ready? Then let's move forward with the motion. Should we have a roll call or? Okay, Angie, go ahead.
Commissioner Lumberman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Bunting,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yes, motion passed. Thank you very much.
Do you guys have a card or can you?
Yeah, I think I do.
Actually, I got to tell you, when you first opened up, I volunteered that if you were ever short of somebody to give me a call, but you didn't. But that's okay because COVID-19 hit right there.
Thank you for coming and I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really do appreciate it.
I do.
And your good questions. We won't get better without questions. So thanks.
All right, next up, amendment of veterans burial policy. Nancy?
Good evening. I just want to go over this policy really quick. I gave you both copies, the one that was changed so you can see the changes, and then of course the clean copy for signature. A few things that I do want to bring to your attention. Overall, most of it is just cleaning up the language. The legal counsel did a great job doing that. So not a lot of it has changed, but there's a few things that did change, and I just want to bring your attention to those areas. First of all, in number 3 on the first page, it talks about that the benefits are for veterans. In the past, they have done veteran spouses, veterans who qualify for this benefit, their spouses were part of this as well. It's never been written in the policy. It was just interpreted that way. And I just wanted to get your opinion on that before we go forward to make sure that if we need to write that in, we can write that in. Or if you want to continue interpreting the policy like that, we can continue to do that as well. The next thing is on 5.1, the clause including the reserve components, and it still has to serve at a certain time, certain number of days and so forth, is included in that definition. And then the other big thing is on 6.3. It used to be where it was just at $300 period, but the county is going to be paying for the full cost for the emplacement of eligible veterans, headstones, or markers. Usually the cost of that is $150. I think there's only been one time in all the history that I was able to pull up that it costs more than $150. So those were the big changes, and I will just let you guys have any questions and get your thoughts on number 3 and how we want to define who these benefits are really for, if it's just the veterans or their spouses as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Nancy, would you repeat one more time? You said that in the past, the spouse of the veteran was also included in that benefit just because there was nothing ever written down. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So if we felt like that, or I feel, I should say, I feel that if that's been in the past and we assumed it was there, then in my opinion, we just should write it in there as such. And then your policy is always the same and nobody makes a mistake.
I would agree. As far as if you guys want to do it, include the spouses, I definitely would encourage that we actually write it in there.
Okay. And the next one was? You wanted to change something else?
No, I was just bringing it to your attention, 6.3. We used to only pay $300 for the emplacement of eligible veterans, headstones, or markers. We used to have a cap on that. Now this says we will pay the full cost. And like I mentioned, most of the time, except for one exception, it's always been right around $150 to pay for these. So I don't think that's a huge deal. It's not going to be thousands of dollars every time we have an emplacement. But there will be some variance.
And see, there's some real variance in that. The other thing that I think maybe we really need to think about is that we're running into a lot of veterans that have a marker that's there and a double stone. And so we're either mounting a niche plate or we're mounting the VA plate on the back of a monument, keep it up out of the ground. Some cemeteries will let you have to put a VA plate in the ground if they have a cemetery marker there because it's out of the mowing row. And so what happens, it sits in front or in back of it, and then they can't mow around it or clean very well with it in the cemetery. So they're either telling you can have a VA marker or you can put it on the back of a stone. So I don't know, that would be something to include in there. Today they get $165 to mount this on a stone, a niche plate, or they come right to the cemetery, a guy does and drills it and mounts it on a stone. So I don't know if that's something we want to look at. Because we do have some cemeteries and we'll let you put both in. If a couple has a marker out there today and the husband's a veteran, it's a blank on the back. If you don't mount it on the back of the stone, the cemetery won't let you put it in the ground because it sets out in front of the marker or behind the marker. And when they mow, it's not an easy mow up to the foundation. They're running over the markers and nicking them and that type of thing. So they won't let you put them in. So I don't know, there's something, it's just kind of, it's not a new thing. We've been doing it 20 years, but it's probably not been looked at in 20 years.
So if I understand you correctly, You're saying that some have both? Is that what you
Some
meant?
of a marker will say you put Smith on it and you got Joe and Susie. And then on the back, you get the VA marker when the veteran dies. So it comes to us and we'll say to them, you can't put it in the ground because the cemetery, they have what's called a marker row. And so the markers
Right.
all are lined up and they run a mower on the back side of those with their wheel up on the foundation. So if you put the marker in the ground, now they're going to hit the marker.
Okay,
And you put it, so what we're doing is we're taking that marker and mount it and we're actually fixing it to the back of the stone, which is an upright stone type of thing. Or we're doing it on a slant. And so that's out of the ground. They last longer, they stay clean, the bird washings come off from the grass clippings. They look like brand new. So we've been doing that a long time. Everybody in the county does it. And so I don't know if there's something that you would want to change to mount on the back of the headstone. They would pay, I think you probably ought to put a number on it, up to $175 or something. And if we told a family that they'll pay $175 and the guy in 5 years goes to $200, they got to pay $25 or something, I just think you probably ought to have a number in there. Because
Okay.
we have one cemetery in the county that's private. And it's like $3,000 to do a burial there. You can get one done out to Hamilton or over to North Shade or North New Haven for $400, so it's the private cemetery is the one that's really going to hook you.
okay.
And so I maybe if you had a number on there, that would be fine. We wouldn't.
In the past, we've had 300 as our cap, and we can definitely put that number back in there if that's what you would like.
To mount a marker in the ground, 300?
Yes.
I thought that was the burial benefit.
Well, they just matched it in the.
Oh,
So when I was talking to Rodolfo, that was one of the things that he was like, hey, you shouldn't really cap the emplacement of the marker. But, if that, like I said, most of them are $150 is what I've seen. I think there's only been one that was like $500 to $600, if I remember.
the St. John's are going to Owasso, I know.
So, but that it's in addition to the county benefit. So you get the $300 and then in addition to that, we can put a number for the emplacement of the headstone or marker.
Whether you
So
mounted it or put it in the ground, right?
exactly, yes. So, but just over the trends and all the historical data I looked at, it was roughly around $150 that it was costing. But
And I think that's a fair number because like I get $65 to do it. So if I told the family I can get you $150 from the government or from the county, and you're going to pay $15 to put this on the back of the stone. And like I say, if it's 5 years down the road and he goes to 200 with inflation or whatever, he comes right to the cemetery and screws them right on. So it's an event to do that. You have to have a specialized equipment to do it, and they do it in the cemetery with a generator and sandblasters.
okay.
So I think 150 is whether you put it in the ground or you mount it on a stone is fine.
But those were the two big changes. So I just kind of wanted to point those out and if you had any other questions, most of it is just redefining things more clearly in the legal sense versus layman's terms. So.
To me, it looked like you just cleaned a lot of it up. This is an old rule.
Yeah, this was a long time ago.
Nancy, I felt like you presented that spousal benefit like totally without bias. Do you agree with George's assessment that, if that's the way we've always been doing it, we should still do it?
I do. If you think about it, the people who need this benefit are people who are, because you got to have a very low income to receive this benefit to start with. So, and the last thing you want to do is put more stress on veterans or the veteran spouse in a time that they're grieving. So if we can make their life a little bit easier, because the families endure just as much as the veterans endure when they go off to war. And so I do think that they should be part of this benefit. So yes, that is my opinion, is I do think that eligible spouses for the veterans should be part of this benefit.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, and I believe that also, Nancy, because you can take a veteran and take him to Great Lakes or to Fort Custer and they'll skip a grave. They bury in a row. I mean, you can't pick a grave out when you go there. We're burying in row H today. And if we bury the veteran today, or if we bury the spouse of the veteran today, there's no cost for that for her. And then they skip that grave and they bury the next guy tomorrow in the next grave. And they'll put a marker out for the spouse. They'll put a marker out, and when the veteran dies or vice versa, they'll put a double marker out for both of them. So she's entitled that spot in a national cemetery. So we probably ought to do that here.
Yeah, sure.
All right, any other questions?
I move these changes.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Bunting. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay, motion passed. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Thank
We're on to Drain Commission. Bernie?
Hey, guys. Good. Well, I think you've all had a chance to look over my annual report. I guess rather than read a whole bunch of numbers, is there questions or something that I can address for you? I mean, it's annual.
Yeah, I just, I didn't look at last year's. Are we up? We doing more drains?
I would say,
Same, are we?
see, during COVID, we had problems, it slowed down. We were doing more maintenance. Our petition process slowed down. We didn't borrow any money last year. That tells you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did change a lot, but it was just because of the COVID restrictions and all of that going on. So last year, I didn't borrow any money.
You had no petitions last year?
We sat on them if we did, and the engineers couldn't get them through. I mean, we're still having trouble with engineers. I mean, it takes us like a year to get a petition.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
A year, and then pets to get a bid pretty much, and then we're starting. So like right now, and probably last October, I would say we had meetings, petitions approved. The engineers have just gotten them rolled out. We're just getting them bid through. Pretty much the 1st of December is that slump coming through of them four. And then now we're into, by the time I get financing and everything, we'll be like January, earliest they could start saying we have good weather, which we worked through last winter. We were working, but it was just the way it all comes through. So
you maybe really hit a little harder in the next 2 cycles.
kind of,
Yeah.
but we're trying to do a lot on maintenance. I try and counter, petition our expensive total rebuilds. And if I can go, and everybody just thinks, well, I need a petition. So they sign a petition, get the signatures, and here we go. Where a lot of these, I can do maintenance, slide in, do this, as long as it follows the law, So I do try and do everything I can. I can't change tile, upsize tile. I can replace tile the same size, but if I'm lowering the grade, change the grade, then it has to be a petition process. If I'm changing culverts, got to be a petition process. The drain office, any district does not own culverts. They are all owned by private property or the road commission.
I see.
So anytime I'm doing that, it's not district money. So that's why it's a petition to say. I don't know, Sam, I got some extra code or law books. I was gonna bring them down and give everybody, you guys can read it.
They ask if you're busier this year than you were last year. I don't know how you need how to dig them and I just know you got to make the water go away.
Yeah. And it seems like it's that simple, but it seems challenging too. I would say I have like 5 or 6 petitions that I'm sitting on right now that I tried to do maintenance and I got 5 years to work on. So if I don't put them out for bid, I can play with maintenance, trying to fix things that will improve the drainage of that area without doing a petition if I don't have the reasons I need to. So that's where, like I got a petition right outside of here for a couple of years, but we've been trying to do maintenance, trying to get everything so I don't have to replace that pipe.
So who pays for that then? Who pays for that then? If you don't petition, you don't borrow any money, who pays for that?
The district still does.
So,
I can do maintenance or I can do a petition.
you bill them for that then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And that's where like I think it come on your guys' agenda as the first report. Okay. But I consider it my second, but it's the report to special drainage.
I see. Okay.
That right there is, well, it includes more, but it's our maintenance. So like if I go in and have a tile blowout and it costs us $1,200 to fix it, and that's the only expenses I had on the district for that district that year, chances are I will assess it the following year for that 1,200. So then that's where a lot of ours are,
Yep.
less expensive assessments. It's always the petition projects that are the expensive ones.
I understand that.
But we're rebuilding, we're redoing, it's a major overhaul on that drainage system.
You're preaching to the choir, buddy. I think my parking lot drains every drain in this county because I always get the letters from you.
Well, I start sending them out to every.
I think that's you said one to say.
Yeah, but
Let's say him.
if the districts is in your district, that's why you get the
I
letter
know.
to try and inform you of what's going on. So if someone calls you and and says, "Hey, George, what are they doing?" Well, at least George has got I got a letter, but call Bernie, and that should be your guys' answer. Call the drain office. We explain this, we explain it, and they explain it. That's what we're there for. And then plus they can come in and we can print maps. We can thoroughly explain it if they have further questions. So, other than that,
I move we accept this.
Motion, we accept this report. Is there a second? Support by Commissioner Bailey, motion by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion?
Did you have anything else, Bernie?
no, but if you guys have any questions ever, just give me a call.
I do.
And yeah, I know, but I won't, because I don't want it to be unknown. I'd rather explain what happened.
I got goofy stuff. I don't call you up by that.
Yeah, I'll keep sending you letters,
Okay.
but
Righty, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passed. Thank you, Bernie.
I think.
And
All right, isn't it your right, Commissioner Lennon, to watch for the clip that I had? Here it is.
it was there somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, look what. All right, we're obviously taking just a moment here to get ourselves. Good.
Is that snow?
It is snowing.
Oh, yeah. Been doing that off and on all day.
The lady said my wife
Not gonna stick.
yesterday, she was in the Sioux and it was, they were in the
Oh,
motel.
yeah. They got
Mm.
4 inches of snow in Grand Marais last night.
This is when we wail, I'm not ready. Anyway. I like you less and less all the time. Anyway, hello, everybody. Sheila and I are going to talk to you a little bit about classification and compensation studies. I have to say it's very interesting to be in here. I haven't sat in here with you probably since the beginning of COVID or when you returned. So go ahead and kick us off. Sheila.
All right. Over recent months, there's been some conversation about whether we should do a class comp study. As we have brought forth new positions that need to be classified, reclassified, or look at the compensation of the positions, it has been brought up over and over. Is it time to do something different? And so tonight we are going to provide you with information about what that would look like, the consequences, the pros and the cons of that are, and hopefully lead you to be able to have a conversation about how we want to move forward.
Indeed, without really knowing what these things are or what the process is, it's very difficult for you to evaluate why have we been doing it as we have been doing it, and should it be done in a different way?
We had placed in your meeting packet just a quick and dirty article about class comp studies and what they are, but we do have obviously a little bit of a show for you here tonight. But we're talking about these things called classification and compensation studies and systems. So what are they exactly? I'm wondering too, because there it is. A classification system. It is an organized pattern of positions. And they are grouped based on duties, responsibilities, knowledge, abilities, education, experience. So you're grouping like positions analyzed by these factors. They are job families or like jobs. That's interesting how this is good. The compensation system, and these are separate things. Let me emphasize that. The compensation system is one which through study, you ensure that positions in your organization are being paid consistently. This is like pay for like work. So folks that are doing work, say, of equal complexity, requiring similar levels of education and experience, whether the tool is a keyboard or a shovel, you need to have a system of ensuring that those positions are being paid equally. So why update a classification compensation system? Well, let me say too that class and comp systems are different. You will hear them referred to together simply because you cannot put together a classification system without first developing your organized system of positions. That is your classification system. So they are separate bodies of work, but they do come together to create for you a system of both classification and then in turn compensation. So why do you want to update these things? And you do. First of all, we talked about the equal pay for equal work. So there's a fairness component. And in addition to it being fair, if it is found, if we are challenged and it's found that we are not paying equally for equal work, we can run afoul of certain state and federal laws, statutes, regulations. So there's both a fairness component and a legal component. Recruitment, and we've talked about this. If we are not classifying positions appropriately and compensating folks appropriately, we're not going to be competitive. We're going to have trouble recruiting folks. And then similarly, once we get them on board, if we don't continue to pay them competitively, they're going to leave. We're not going to be able to keep them. So recruitment issues. We helped the prosecutor, Keith Cushion, to come to you in recent months to talk about the problems that he was having in recruiting assistant prosecutors. You may remember that. And we put together information for you where we showed what other counties were paying their assistant prosecutors, comparable counties, and arrived at some numbers, shared with you the situation out in Montcalm County where the prosecutor there had gone to his board and said, I can't get people, sharing the concern we were having here. So you folks made the decision to increase the compensation for that position and give him some additional authority to move on the scale. And he indeed did attract actually an excellent candidate for that. So we attracted that candidate. If we don't continue to pay her in a competitive way, we're not going to retain her. So all of those reasons for keeping an updated classification and compensation system. We also, organizations change over time. And I dare say in the last 5 years, this organization has changed quite a bit. And it is important that we do what is necessary to keep up with changes in the organization. When I got here, there was not a financial administrator. There was not a human resources administrator, just to name two examples. Every professional organizations, every multi-million-dollar organization needs a financial administrator and a superb human resources officer. So we actually did a class comp study on this. I'll go back to that in a moment, but that was necessary to figure out where these folks worked in a classification system, and then in turn, what competitive and fair compensation was for these folks. And then I had said that fairness was a legal requirement, but by the way, our policies also require this. And of course, the policies are written with legal requirements in mind. So in our non-union benefits manual at section 2, it references position classification. And that does say, in summary, you're supposed to do these, keep these things up to date, and in order to ensure fairness and all of the other reasons. So policies and law. So because we've done that, nope, back. Okay, so why update it? Did I just do that? Yeah. Okay, well, the law requires it, and I was saying that after policy, I got all excited and wanted to go on. But it's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, regulations from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and also state and federal equal pay acts. They're all out there keeping an eye on us. So, all right, just because I think 5 times telling you this, maybe you haven't gotten it yet, why you want a good classification system, why it matters, all the things I've been talking about, recruitment, retention, but I thought you might want to see a circle rather than just straight lines of text. We've got to mix it up here just to keep everybody interested. And equitable salary structure, talking about that, benchmarks to compensate fairly. Again, that's connection between classification systems and compensation systems. Oh, but what happens when you don't keep up, Sheila?
All right, so when classification systems are neglected, time position descriptions are no longer reflective of the actual positions that we may have, what responsibilities they're responsible for. This is just one exception or one example, and I'm not picking on the sheriff, but this is something that I received since I've been here. It was the corrections officer's job description. So this is what it looks like. And I did give you a copy of this. This is not just,
gave a copy?
Yep.
Okay.
This is not generally the format that we would use. And this has been updated since we've been here, but this is just was a system that just was not updated. There's not even a date on it, so I'm not sure when it would have even been created. But that's just an example of that these things do need to be updated and have accurate information on this.
List of duties. That's not even a position description. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
When these things do not get done often or regularly, they do become ad hoc. So that's when you have us coming to what feels like meeting after meeting after meeting with people saying reclassified. And so it becomes us looking at individuals versus looking at the position or looking at the grouping of people. Then the systems may no longer reflect the values of the organization. One example of that is professional development. May not show what happens if a person were to get an extra credential. That's something that's also been evaluated by you. Tracy has brought 2 systems, 2 positions to you where we've implemented that. And then systems may no longer meet legal requirements. Like she said over and over, we need to make sure that like jobs have like pay and that we're comparing apples to apples.
When you say over and over, are you saying that I'm droning on and I'm no longer interested?
Never.
Oh, okay. So what result are we trying to get at here, Sheila?
All right, so she's got a list of them, but in general, what it basically comes down to is we want to have a fair, competitive, appropriate, and financially responsible outcome. That's what it comes down to.
Talked faster than I could click, but that's a summary. That's what we're after. Okay. So how are we doing here in Gratiot County? We may have missed some things, but this is what we have come up with. And I'm going to step forward just a little bit. Excuse me.
Yes.
You know, you want to do these things, not to give away all the exciting stuff, but you want to be doing comprehensive classification and compensation reviews and studies. Industry recommendations are every 3 to 5 years. What tends to happen out there in the world, especially in the public sector, however, is that they tend to happen about every 7 to 10 years. Okay. Well, this county had, doesn't show up there. We had a comprehensive study done, class and comp, back in June of 1990. And you had a second one done, this place, had a second full classification study done in 1997. We're familiar with William Rye, common name. And so it's William Rye. We've got a box full of stuff back there showing us this study. After that, there is a series here of having just individual positions reclassified. And that's not so bad because you've got the same company doing some of them and then another professional company doing the others. Excuse me. You don't want to miss this part. I'm telling you. Come on. But you were having one position at a time done. At least these folks would know to try to keep it wrapped into the class and comp system that you have. But after a while, you start to build an ugly house. Finally, I'm guessing you folks said, I'm tired of paying per position. Current rate is about $800 per position, so it'd be about $7,200 each spent during that time, although it was less than. But anyway, then you retained someone to create a scoring tool for you, so that each time there's a position that comes before you, comes to Sheila, somebody says, I want my position reclassified, I want my staff's position reclassified. Rather than going out and paying $800 to somebody to do that, we run it through this scoring tool. And that scoring tool does, to some extent, what these pros will do, in that it factors in, I don't remember all the factors, but it's knowledge, technical knowledge, how many people do you supervise, all the factors that are considered, and a score is created. And there's the determination of where it would fit in grades that have been established. So you see those when we bring those to you, we bring you the scoring sheet, we bring you the numbers, the whole thing. So that got us through 2016. But we talk about organizations that change and that you have to reclassify or do another study when organizations change. Indeed, we created what I've just, for the convenience of communication, I've called the executive group. And we were just pulling numbers out of our hats. We didn't know what to pay folks. So we retained, again, Mark Notley's firm, Municipal Consulting Services. And we had these positions in the county government and on the court side reviewed and placed in a classification scheme and compensation scheme. And you folks reviewed that at length, tried to figure out what to do with the information that was given to you, and then finally did make some decisions. Some of these positions are new. Again, the financial administrator on the county side, HR was being done entirely differently. IT is another story, but we also wondered, we had our department heads, most of them paid about the same, and that didn't seem quite right, especially in the complexity of the work that a couple of the department heads were doing. So in this classification study, there were different levels, different classifications created for those department head positions. In the court did, I think, a very successful and effective reorganization. A district court administrator, that position is framed differently than it was in the past. Specialty courts manager as specialty courts came online. So there's also some concern, frankly, are those folks overpaid? Are they overclassified? And so we got some numbers and helped to make some adjustments there. So that's the most recent group that you've done. But so, okay, you've seen that we did the full study in 96 and 97, and then we did one group in 2019. Well, how do we stack up? How often, when and how often should you be doing these things, Sheila?
Well, job classifications are ever changing, and it is never expected to be a one-time thing. Some factors that may trigger when there's a need for a new study or just a partial study would be new technologies, new initiatives, or a new class of people that's being added to the organization. It is recommended to have a 3 to 5 year cycle. That is the industry standard. The actual industry reality is 5 to 7 years, 7 to 10 years. But for us, based on what Tracy has already said, we have been it's been 24 years since we've had a comprehensive study.
You know, it's fun when you're preparing for these things because you start going through boxes and files and you come up with all kinds of little gems. Let's go 7 to 10 years. As Sheila indicated, we're at about 24 years, but 8 years ago, in 2013, Mark Notley from Municipal Consulting Services said 8 years ago that the Gratiot County classification and compensation system is aged. Related to this, one could debate point assignments for any position in the plan, meaning who knows if they're right. In conducting the reclassification analyses for the county, I attempt to successfully work with this condition. It's all goofed up, it's old, but I'll do the best I can. In doing so, one must recognize that the point values are not absolute for any position, but must be considered in the larger context of other positions and more broadly, the overall plan. So back in 2013, the Gratiot County classification and compensation system was aged. So that and all kinds of other tidbits. So talking about this in general terms, I know you are just itching to know, okay, well, what do you do when you have a classification study? Folks, I'm going to tell you now. First of all, you retain a consultant because to do this in HR terms is a little bit like any of us deciding to go out and try to build a bridge. I'm not going to do it. I don't have that expertise. And if you doubt the complexity of this, the study that was done in either 96 or 97, I think this is the 1997, this is what that looked like. And this is what the work produced in part. Every single position is listed here. All the scores, if I had a third hand, but I do have a chin, you get a score for knowledge and skills. There really is video on this, isn't there? But anyway, you have scores. John would be happy to tell you all about it. And this is done by someone who knows how to create these scores and how to calculate them. And it's through the scoring that you figure out how positions should be grouped, what the job families are. Anything, John, you would like to tell the folks about this document?
Well, not only are there scores, but then all these scores are weighted as well. So it just depends on, which factor you think is important, like knowledge.
Oh, they're all important.
Or contacts and working relationships, but then it doesn't, you have the score and then you have the weight. And so, it looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, because it is.
Yeah.
Because it is. Okay. So that's the process. It isn't who does the most important work or it's none of that. It's weighting all these things. So what's the process? You get a consultant, somebody who knows what he or she is doing. And their role is to first meet with everybody and make sure that the unions, the employees, everybody understands how class and comp studies are done. And indeed, when we had Mark Notley here in 2019, first thing he did is have a meeting with everybody here. I was remoting it at the time. I remember it well. So that was the first thing he did. Excuse me. Then, how does he get those scores and those numbers? Well, your consultant will provide every person who is subject to the study, every position that is subject to the study, will provide them a position description questionnaire. This, I believe that our very helpful commissioner will attest, is a very long questionnaire. And it doesn't just ask, what do you do all day? It asks a whole bunch of questions. And what I'll do is I'll just pass it and it'll give you something to do, thank goodness, other than just listen to me. This just isn't a, what's your name? What do you do? What's your title? Thanks very much. There's a lot of information there. So once these things are submitted, the consultant does an initial review of these things. We'll do some work to verify or elaborate on the information that is provided. We'll often talk with managers, supervisors, and so forth, just for clarification about certain points. But sometimes we'll do these things called desk audits. We'll sit beside the employee and just watch what he or she does over a period of time. Also interviewing that employee. But desk audits takes a fair amount of time, these studies do. So again, once you get this information, you communicate with everybody, confirm and clarify information, because before you start running numbers, you want to make sure you have full information and correct information. So then with all of this, the analysis begins. You you draft preliminary class specifications and you send it back to the supervisors and others. I would be involved, Sheila would be involved to review and to provide feedback. And that would be a guided process. And then finally, with all of that information, the class specifications submitted to us, the consultant would come and do a report to you and try to explain all of this, would not provide nearly so interesting a presentation as you are receiving this evening, but nonetheless, it would be informative. So that's the classification study process. Remember, classification studies and systems are different than compensation systems and studies. So, but remember to have a compensation system, you must first have your classification system. So how do we go about then up with this compensation study? First, you access all the information, certainly from this organization, but also from comparable organizations. And by the way, on a much smaller scale, this is what we do for you each year when we are going to go into union negotiations. If we're paying $20 an hour and all the counties around us are paying $25 an hour, we maybe need to negotiate that a little bit. And that goes back to why do we want to have updated class comp systems? Because the sheriff is just darn tired of losing road patrol deputies and others to the county right next door that pays $5 an hour more. Those numbers are made up. We're actually quite competitive at this point, but it's because of these studies and the authorization you have given us going into negotiations. So you get all that information and you compare it. Then you, I'm getting something about pushing the buttons here. Then you define your job categories to compare apples to apples. This is back to equal and fair pay. Collect data here and from elsewhere. Some of this is a little bit repetitive. But then you do an analysis. You've got all of this, our data, that of other areas. And then you need to analyze the factors. How fresh is the data? Are we looking at Clare County's data from 3 years ago? Is our data fresh? I mean, all of that sort of thing. You just do what you need to do to make sure that you are comparing apples to apples. But also you consider, and these things can be factored in, there are certain positions that are just difficult to fill. We know that the equalization director is a very difficult position to fill. George was very involved in following that process closely, and you folks actually made were very helpful in helping us to meet our current equalization director's compensation requirements, and it's just worked out beautifully. Financial administrators here, with the qualifications and the experience that we need, very difficult to fill. So those are our two examples, and you would factor that in as well. Compare it to your market average. You may remember in the Mark Notley study, you were given all of these things and the rates of pay, and then you had like a 1.9 for one position and a 0.98 for another. What that meant, it was a formula that the 0.98 person was being paid slightly below market, and the 1.9, whatever I said, is being paid above market rate. That's a formula, and that's what that number meant. So you create that table that shows then you make your pay structure decisions, and that's exactly what you did when you got Mark Notley's study. You didn't just say, "Yep, sounds good to us." I mean, there was a lot of discussion about how to look at those numbers and what to do with them. And then, of course, you've got these results. How do you want to address positions that seem underpaid and overpaid? And again, that's exactly what you did with those 14 or 15 positions that were studied in the Mark Notley study, the Municipal Consulting Services study in 2019. So it seems like, and we've told you, you want to keep these things up to date. There's fairness and legal requirements. There's recruitment and retention considerations. Why wouldn't we want to do this other than what could possibly go wrong? Well, there are certain challenges.
There certainly are. So it could potentially set expectations by our staff that the study is going to cause increases in compensation. And so if it comes back in the wages that it looks like our wages are low, and then it comes to negotiation time and our staff say, no, you need to be paying us what this says, that could cause some friction. We need to be able to afford the compensation increases if it's shown that we're not being competitive. And that's not just in the short term, that's in the long term, because that can have a long-term effect as well. And then affording current staff in times of economic downturn. We want to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible. So that may be a reason that we decide to not move forward with this and just continue on with what we have.
And that's certainly your option. I mean, it's not the best way to go. And I think it was Sam and John that actually gave voice to, maybe it's time to have a study. I'm not committing you, don't worry. Just noticing. No better, Sam. Because
But you
I
did say it.
Record these things, okay, should we be doing these things one at a time? And the answer is really no. But maybe there are reasons why you don't want to pay for it. Working well enough. The EEOC or the Attorney General hasn't come and said, hey, you're not doing equal pay for equal work. Hey, we're okay. But these are also reasons why you might not want to do. But so the question for you folks, we've talked long enough and we've given you as much information, actually more than we actually know. So the question for you in the end is study. And we have no particular recommendation for you. Our role here, we believe, was to provide you all of the information, historical, drawing from all the sources we could lay our hands on, to allow you folks to have a discussion about this. And it does not need to be now, Mr. Chair. We stand down and allow you to do what you will do. I would ask, do you have any questions? Let me qualify that though by saying you can only ask questions that we know the answers to.
So any questions?
The only con I saw was that staff might have expectations of pay raises.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you feel is a con to doing it other than perhaps cost?
Well, there's the insecurity really, because, I think that if we thought that we were going to continue to bring in windmill money and solar money, and I have no doubt this board, maybe there are one or two exceptions. I do believe that this board would really want to get that into the hands of our staff in compensation. But that scares the heck out of you because we all lived through 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then the discussion then is, well, can we get the unions to agree to salary cuts? That's tough. Really, you start looking at who do we cut? Who do we say, and that's tough. That's tough. And we can give you, and Chris has given a presentation kind of doing a projection of future revenues. And, you go up for a while and then you flatten out and it starts to go down.
We got that 15.5% mark that we got to.
That's assuming current levels of economic development. I mean, but you don't know. And as
We do have a target that we have to stay around. So that's not our thinking. That is what really it is. Our financial person gave us that number. And that's what we have to target ourselves to be around in order to be solvent way into the future. So I believe that we need to go ahead and find out where the true values are so we can make rational, good decisions. And I think one of the things that Sam has brought up many times, and I agree with him, is that somehow with our discussions, we have to come up with an arbitrary date that fits to our budget. In other words, these last minute August, September changes in salary have to come a little bit quicker. I think, and those people know, in my opinion, that the department heads know what they want to do. I imagine just get it in here at whatever time our budget people think that they should be there. But it's this late to the party all the time is kind of upsetting because we've got a budget and then it goes back and forth in that last month or so because of all the late changes that are made in salaries. And I think that's one of the things that I hope that we can prevent is having those late budget changes.
Well, I think these things are expensive. And I think these to not that you're spending anything, but to spin it that we won't lose a deputy of Mike's to that county next door, because if they don't do a salary and they say we're paying maybe we're 0.5 over what the average is, wherever they get these averages from the air, wherever they get them. You know, it's we're paying $25 an hour and that's what we're supposed to pay. And we're right at 1 and we're there paying $25 an hour and Montcalm County decides to pay $30. I gotta leave.
I know, I hope you're not understanding or interpreting what we said.
No.
That we will never lose an employee, even if we do a class comp study.
Right.
But you do point out something interesting, Sam, is market, I think we could start pushing one another up and we're still the market. And you know, that's a risk, but you know, we're going to feel that pressure whether we do a study or not.
And I'm a believer with these type of folks. And I've been involved in a number of things that you can make that come out where you want it to come out. You can just say, I think we'd like to be right in this area. And he can make that thing work, or she can make that thing work out to where you're right at. And so I don't sometimes know how true they are. I don't know where they get their numbers. But by us looking at, we just did this with the elected officials. And we make calls to counties. You know, you made calls, I made calls. We did that with policemen and jail people. I made calls to these counties. And I said, well, I just, you know, talked to the administrators and said, tell me what you guys make, you know, and they all were happy to do that. I think by having a study, you really don't understand where they get that number. That's my only concern. And you don't know if they're picking 6 counties our size. You don't know if they're picking them, you know. It's kind of like the airplane study. We did the airport study. I mean, they looked at Lansing Airport, you know, and that's an international airport, and that's in our study, you know. And so I think things like that, I don't know the all to be end all. That's my only concern about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody ought to be paid fair, you know, and when the court systems come, I have no idea what a lawyer makes here or a prosecutor should make here. I have no idea. But those guys do know that. And I take those judges at their word that they would know they cannot hire an assistant prosecutor for $50,000 in this county when you can go anywhere and probably make whatever it is, 90 or whatever we're paying them, or 100. I'm not sure what it is. So, but I think those people in that department know what they make. And I think Mike, the sheriff, knows what policemen make, you know. And so when this study comes back, we're either going to be on the mark, or we're going to be high, or we're going to be low. I guess I just don't have a lot of faith. You know?
Sure. One of the reasons to have meetings with a consultant at the beginning and at the end is at the end, that individual should make him or herself available to you to answer those questions. Which counties did you draw from? Where did this data come from? How do you do that? And I do seem to recall that you did ask Mark Notley some of those questions. And by virtue of those questions, we present to you now additional data, not just population. We present you taxable value and all those kinds of things. And so those were very good and very beneficial questions. A prosecutor is going to be able to we called around and find out what other folks are making. Assistant prosecutors all over this state do essentially the same thing. We were able to call around and find out what do other treasurers make, what do clerks make, because those are positions defined by statute. And so we know that they are all doing essentially the same thing. And that distinguishes these kinds of things we've done with an overall system study. The sheriff knows what people make. Who knows what the data coordinator in equalization makes all of the study. Bad example. The home maintenance specialist, the maintenance technician, the caregiver trainer, the victim witness coordinator. Bad example again. There are only so many of those around. The intake probation officer in juvenile. So I think you get the point. It's not as easy to just figure out what those folks make. The other problem with that, and we ran into that doing our comps one year, is that the intake probation officer in the juvenile department here may be doing something very different than what an intake juvenile department person does in another county. These are not statutory positions. Each county can create them and put together their position descriptions. So I agree with what you said, but only to a point.
When you take that position right there. If he does 15 certain things, he or she does 15 certain things. So now how is this guy with the study? He got to find somebody that's going to do 13 of those things. He got to find somebody around that does 13 that can have some comparison to. Or does he just look in his mind and go, I think he ought to make that?
Well, what would be a professional's motivation in saying, I just think he should make that? And you indicated he can have, so what
we're real specific in that job, and we got 15 certain element or person does. And there's maybe one county in Detroit that has that. Maybe Wayne County has that person. He does the same 15 things, or she does the same 15 things. There'll be a lot of difference in salary.
Yeah, because you calculate, there are other things that go into it, as we indicated, what's appropriate for your organization, your location, your workplace. So there are other factors that go into it as well. I don't know how to do that balancing.
Yeah.
But, there are processes for the scoring, and there's a Hay method of scoring these things that somebody's tried to teach me twice. It's just like euchre, I can't learn it. But I digress. It just came to my mind. It tortures me, really. Yeah. But, somebody could say to Sheila, you just like me better, or you like her better. And so you wanted the numbers to come down to a certain place, even if Sheila had all the training and qualifications to do this. But there is even though that would be nonsense, you can't, it would be hard to explain why any consultant, any professional would say, I know where I want this to come out. I offer that if I'm understanding your point. So these are my thoughts about your questions. That may all be true and may be a reason not to do this.
I kind of feel the same way that Commissioner Smith feels about this, because the fact that you can do a study today, and now all of that's going to change. And, if you're going to do a study, you almost have to do it every single year. Another part is this. You take like the treasurer's office or the clerk's office. If they have an employee that, say, decides to quit for some reason and they have to rehire somebody new, that's the time that it should be looked into, like what should they be paying, or maybe they were making good money, but they just want to be home with their family. So there's lots of circumstances on this. And there's a lot of people that want to live in this community. Maybe you can make $2 more over in Saginaw, but you got to drive over there. That's going to cost you money. Or if you move over there, it's going to cost you more money. So it also goes by your community of, like here you can get rent pretty cheap to live, versus in Saginaw or maybe Lansing or another, someplace like that. So there's lots of circumstances on this.
If we look at each person's wage, just because there's a vacancy, that's when we get into a dangerous situation, because that's when apples don't match apples. So that's when a deputy in the clerk's office may not be making the same as a deputy in the register of deeds or the treasurer's office. That's when apples to apples matters, because otherwise that's when we need to worry about law.
The money that you're putting out into a study. So say the treasurer's office hires someone and she becomes the deputy treasurer, and she's making X amount of dollars and she gets $1 raise, and maybe somebody over here that's making, you have to start comparing, go online. And again, we have computers today. You can go on and check all of this stuff right on a computer to see what everybody else is making in that department. And such as the clerk's office or the courts or whatever. I think that having somebody do a study on us. I just think that, I don't think we go by, if we went by those studies, we would be going by them yet today, and we're not. We still take, you have the sheriff's office, you have the courts upstairs, and these people go online to find out what other counties are making. They don't go by what we give or by any studies. And I don't think they have for a long time.
Addressing a couple of your points. One, some of what you've represented about what folks can do to get this information, I think actually makes the point of why you have a professional consultant do these things, because that's really not the way they're done. And if you start looking to, well, I'm just going to adjust one position rather than your entire group, you're going to end up with the not just ugly house, the very ugly house. And frankly, that's about where we are at this point. Also, I don't know of an organization that changes so much in 1 year that another comprehensive classification compensation study is required. I've never heard of such an organization. So, it's just not done.
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not against doing a study. I'm not against finding a baseline to say, are we in the baseline? Are we in the area? I want to get somebody that we're going to be able to sit down and talk to 2 or 3 of these people and say, tell me how you're going to do this. I mean, I just don't want a guy hired and say, here we are.
Are you going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to sit down and whether we interview these people or whatever we do, I want to figure out where they're going to get their numbers. And I want to ask them these questions that, I think we need a baseline.
I think that's the next step, is to actually ask the administrator to bring some costs back. We say it's going to be high, it's going to be this. We don't.
Well, you're going to be 30 to 50 grand probably.
I don't know.
And when you say probably you're going to be in that range?
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I will say that when Mark Notley did the executive class, he looked at that and he said, the whole shoot match. I didn't tell you then, but he did say that. And he said, I will do it all for you for an additional $25,000. He was pointing out that, we created this subset, but it doesn't really doesn't really blend that subset into your overall. So and we paid him, what was it, 13 or 14 or 15 for the initial. So yeah, doing all of it, you would probably be 35 grand is my guess.
And like I say, I'm not against doing it. I'm not against saying, let's just move forward, kind of get some people lined up here and take a look at it, and let's look at them, see some of their history, check some of their backgrounds out. I'm not against that at all. One thing about when they say 3 to 5 years, it kind of reminds me of like the oil change guy. So you got to get your oil changed every 2,000 miles. I run my car 7.
Yeah.
No. And so I think
because we got synthetic oil now.
Time or whatever that is,
Nobody changes their oil.
But I think we should probably have a baseline. It's been a long time. And we've had people coming and saying, I want to be reclassified, or their bosses have come and I want this position reclassified because they picked up 4 more pencils this year or something. I don't know what they did, but I think we need some type of baseline for that. Could be good for us, could be poor for us. But I think we need to try to get some answers of where they're going to get these numbers, where they're going to look, how they'll look.
Yeah, it is not workload, but it's work complexity that gets studied. So having to sharpen 4 more pencils this year would.
I know that. I'm just.
I'm working with that illustration. I think that we understand that that's a workload issue, not a work complexity issue. The process we would need to go through is to send out, just as we did with the Mark Notley study, we would send out an RFP. And in that RFP, we asked them to respond to certain things. And then with the folks that responded, the entities that responded last time, we looked into, and the reason we chose Mark Notley, I hadn't known him and I hadn't known that he had done all this previous work for the county. He had all kinds of Michigan County experience. And so but there isn't any reason in the world why we can't send out that RFP, identify finalists, maybe it's all of the submissions we get, and ask them to do a presentation to this board. There's no reason in the world that we can't do that. And
what's an RFP?
Request for proposals, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
So
we still have a choice to do that or not. I mean,
Can we make a motion to, like, to go
So-
forward to say, we would like you to gather bids and process of how you're gonna come, and you bring 3.
You can do that. I want to say though, and I can refine that in a moment. I want to say though, that if you ask folks to put together a proposal and then come spend time talking to you and answering your questions, it would be a bad thing if you didn't feel like, unless the numbers are just outrageous, if you didn't really think, yeah, okay, we're probably going to do this. We just want to be satisfied with the particular consultant.
I don't agree with that. I think we should have 2 or 3 different consultants come in and I mean, if they're interested in doing the work for us, you don't go with the person that comes in, one person come in and you go with that person.
I don't think anyone was saying that, Jan, so perhaps I misspoke. You would have, 1 or 2, the finalists, John said 3, that's fine. Come in and make a presentation. The point I'm making is, don't use that to decide if you're going to do the study, because that's not respectful to professionals and it does not cast favorably on this board. So what we can do is send out requests for proposals. If we get 5 folks that respond, and I'd be thrilled if we did, surprised frankly, and they all came in at 100,000, we're probably not doing a study, is my guess. And so we don't need to move it ahead. We can just send out a letter saying, thank you for participating. This is not at all in line with what we're prepared to pay, but we hope you'll keep your eyes open for future, blah, blah, blah. We have nice ways of saying things.
So it sounds like we need a motion to do that.
Yeah, also, I'd like to see that we would also see the letter that you send out and the letters that come in, all of them. Can that be a possibility?
Oh, it can be. We always provide you information, but in summary form. And if you want that stack, I'll give you that stack.
Yeah.
And then we'll offer guidance to you about what you can disclose and what not. You can have anything you want, certainly. But we generally pare it down. We provide you a summary. Who responded, what their rate was. Often we'll provide you the packet, the RFP that we send out.
Okay.
You do it any way you like.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's fine.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
So a motion by Commissioner Leverman, support by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion?
And this study would be for all our employees, for all of our departments.
Yes, we should find, actually, you raised an interesting question. Do the courts want to participate? If they do, I mean, it's better if they do, but if
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
if they do, and with the Mark Notley study, the deal was you pay your portion of the study. And that was the agreement going. And they might decide this isn't their priority.
Yeah, I just think those people are really specialty people. To hire an attorney, I mean, he's got,
Attorneys are specialty, but courts don't run on attorneys, they run on clerks.
oh yeah,
And those folks, they're clerks, they're just working with court records rather than some other record. There are certainly highly specialized positions in court systems, but it's not the majority of the positions.
I see. Well, I think they ought to pay their fair share if they want to. I think they ought to pay their fair share if they want to get in.
Okay.
Is there a reason to exclude the unions, or would the unions be?
I would never want to exclude the unions. I would want to, after.
It's only about 4 of us. Bernie and me and you.
There's so many chairs in this room.
Some other people in there. Yeah. That wouldn't be the way to go.
I would take this information to the unions. We have a very good relationship with our unions here. And part of the reason is that we talk with them, we include them, we let them know what we're doing. So if you said, no, just don't include the unions, I'd be very concerned about that. So, and the union positions, of course, are studied because that's but just letting them know what's going on. Yes, we need to communicate with them.
So any further discussion? All those in favor, aye then?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed.
So for myself and for the clerk, I understand that the board has authorized us to issue an RFP, put that together. Once we've got that, we'll of course issue that, but we will also send it to you. I will also be communicating with the courts to determine if, how, what participation they want to have. And that information will be necessary for us to write the RFP. Am I reflecting appropriate understanding?
Yep.
All right. You've been very patient. I don't know about what you think. I find it very hot in this room. You've been very patient, but I want to make sure you're fully informed. And so thank you for your attention. Appreciate it. And I hope it doesn't serve as a demerit, but I think Sheila and I actually had some fun. So thank you.
I be in this room rather than having to speak to you through the computer.
She just threatened you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. So looks like we have one more thing on the agenda. Angie, you have a report?
Yes, that's the last, right?
There you go. You got more work to do tonight, right? And you have more work to do tonight.
Keep you here till about midnight, because that's probably how late I'll be. No, I'm teasing you. So I gave you my report and I included some of the 2019 totals so that you can compare them to 2020. What a complicated year 2020 was, as far as when we had the shutdown, we were told there's nothing that's in an emergency, but you can't stop babies from being born and you can't stop people from passing away. And marriages for a lot of people were very emergency as well. So as you could tell by the numbers, we're pretty close to what 2019 were. I did, some of them are higher, some of them are lower. That could be because of being shut down, like some of the marriages I know were canceled because of the venues and not just that they couldn't come in and get a license. But of course, I met a lot of people in parking lots and also for the election, we were meeting people in parking lots to do their filings for candidacy. So I kind of did a comparison because one of the things that's one of the big concern are the deaths. And I just wanted to let you know that as of today, we had 414 for 2021. So it looks like we're going to be right in the middle of what 19 and 20 were. So I don't think that just because the deaths were higher in 2020, I don't know that it's necessarily COVID related, but so as you can see, CPS concealed pistol licenses are out the door. I mean, they're just exploding, having people come in because even with 2020, when we were issuing CPL licenses, we had to actually postpone them because in order for them to get their license, they have to be fingerprinted within 45 days of their application. And we ran into problems with the sheriff's office being closed. And even other counties their sheriff's departments were closed because, as you know, with fingerprints at that time, most of them were one-on-one. You were actually touching the people and stuff. Now they've come up with more technology as far as that they can do less contact with people for doing prints. But so people were having a hard time trying to find places to get their fingerprints, but we still were able to get 949 CPLs processed last year, and we're up to 748 so far this year. Other than that, I won't read it word for word. One of the things to take note is we've had 3 elections this year. Usually we have a break, but in the next year, I've been informed that we have a countywide again in May. The RESD is going to be running their millage in May. So we'll have a full county election for May, August, and November next year. So it's going to be very busy. So did you guys have any questions about my report?
All I want to say is you did an exceptional job.
Thank you.
You were out there many times in the parking lot and
Yes.
Yeah,
also doing your job. I just,
kind of trying
this
to.
county should appreciate all the effort you Made through that.
our office going, because even we had to meet people for PPOs. I mean, there's just stuff you can't stop.
Right.
Even when the doors are shut, we have to be able to accept things. So
Above board, help people.
thank you.
Your whole job is to help people. You should be commended for that.
I do a lot of business with her and I do a lot of business with a lot of counties. And this is the easiest one to do. And it's not just because I'm a commissioner. It was like that I've been doing business for 40 years. And before she come along, but this has got a lot easier with her. And I think they have a great staff. They do a good job up there. Just a quick story. I needed some death certificates out of Ingham County to get a cremation permit. I couldn't get them to fax me one. They wouldn't let me. I said, I'll come down and let you throw it out the window to me. I'll drive to Mason, Michigan. You can slide it out the window and throw it in the air and I'll pick them up. They wouldn't do that. And the mail was terrible. And so we had to wait for a family about 8 days to get this permit because they would not let me get a death certificate, wouldn't fax me one that after she signed it and certified it. And they said, that's just the way it is here. And I thought, and we do a lot of business with them because we have a lot of deaths in Lansing. And it's not about money. It's not about nothing. They were not letting anybody in their building and they weren't going to do anything. And, you know, these guys have been, when we had the COVID thing, they set them out in the front stoop out there. You see me leave here and pick up envelopes out front. That's for our business. And for the other guys around, and it's been good. But, you know, we had a tough year and
We made it. So, okay, unless you have a question.
I'd just like to add too, that I've known Angie a very short time, and you do above and beyond what you are really have to do. And so, thank you.
we'll accept this report.
Could you motion to accept?
Absolutely.
Motion for Commissioner Smith, I'm hearing. For Commissioner Bailey. We have a second. Second by Commissioner Bunting. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passed. We have additional public comment. Any members of the public want to comment? Matt, anybody online you see?
Nope, there's nobody else connected in right now.
Okay, great. And I believe we've exhausted our agenda. Without objection, we're adjourned.